Hiya and welcome to this week's episode of Inside Property Development, where I'm again talking to my old mate Dave Hughes from Hughes Architecture. We're talking about temporary housing, planning committees, planning delays and a whole load of other interesting stuff. So also don't forget to like and subscribe, because I always forget to say that, and tell your mates. See you in there. Hiya and welcome to this week's episode of Inside Property Development, where I'm talking to my old mate David Hughes about temporary housing.
Hello.
Hello. So you are the first guest to be on twice.
Oh, yeah. It's an honour, actually.
It is an honour.
Although, last time, when was it? About a month ago, 6 weeks ago?
No, a couple of months ago.
And we talked about training for planning committees, do you remember? Mm-hmm. And then just recently the government's announced they're going to do training for planning committees.
Do you think they've been watching?
I think if Angela wants to call us direct, we'll have a chat, we'll give us some advice, couldn't we?
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, hopefully today we'll come up with some other good ideas they can steal from us.
That'd be good. So we will talk about that, the committee thing.
Yep.
But I know in particular you wanted to talk about temporary housing.
Yes. So we've been doing quite a lot of work recently around temporary housing crisis, and particularly about...
Actually, let me stop you here, right? Just thinking, for maybe someone's just come along,
yep,
and they didn't listen to the last episode, so they don't know who you are.
Okay, so
who are you?
So Dave Hughes, design director of Hughes Architects. We're based in London Bridge. We do the vast majority of social housing. You and I have known each other coming up for 20 years, I think, something like that, 17 years. So, yes, and I think last time when we met, we chatted about, you called me the developer's architect because I kind of get it with developer stuff. So, yes, if you didn't see the last one, please go and see it and listen to it, because we slag off architects quite a lot, actually. So, anyway.
We slag off a bit of everyone, don't we?
We do.
And it's very good. So this is meant to be, it's a little bit like a chat in the pub garden, which sadly neither of us can do anymore because we both gave up drinking.
Correct. So,
but anyway,
yes.
so we'll do it here instead.
In the picnic garden instead.
Yeah.
Good.
Okie dokie. Right, temporary housing.
Yes. So we've obviously been working in social housing for a long, long time. And one of the things that's been happening recently in the last few months is, or in fact, last forever, but it's really come to fore in the last year or so, is the ridiculous amount that the government is spending, or councils are spending on temporary housing. I've got my laptop. I'm going to read you some facts and figures, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So nationwide, there's 117,000 households in temporary accommodation. And what's interesting about temporary accommodation, or the crisis, is it's not just the homeless person you see begging on the street, or the guy with his special brew, all the rest of it. It's the families who are between social housing. So it's that hidden homeless, really. So it's not just people you see on the street. It's about people who are in travel lodges or hotels or B&Bs or whatever. Okay. London accounts for about half of that, so 52%. So even though it's a nationwide problem, London is by far the biggest, nut to crack on this with temporary housing. The thing that got everyone sort of going in the last 6 months is that the London councils now spend £114 million per month, or £44 million a day, on temporary housing. So not normal social housing, just temporary housing. Okay, 61,000 households in London are classed as homeless and living in temporary accommodation. That's 183,000 people. The scariest thing is 90,000 of those are children. So this is 1 in 21 children are now homeless. A year ago, it was 1 in 23. And the G15 is the group of the 15 biggest affordable housing providers. Okay. And the G15 launched a thing called Project 123, named after 1 in 23 children. And it's awful that only 12 months later, they have to rebrand as Project 121, So 1 in 21. It's a massive financial issue. It's a massive quality of life issue for people. And there's I've been reading something recently about if we spent money building houses rather than giving them to temporary housing, we'd certainly be fine. But the issue we've got is the time it takes. And you and I have talked at length about the problems with planning and the delays, and I know you talk on your podcast generally about this. So the other interesting thing is £114 million a month. Fine. Well, it's not fine, but people are going to spend money on rent. We have to spend money on rent. Yeah. The more scary bit is the amount that councils spend on hotels, B&Bs, and those sort of uses which are not designed.
Yeah, actually, you'll say it was fine. I know you don't think it's fine.
I don't think it's fine, 140 million, but what I'm saying is you're going to have to spend money on rent.
Yeah. But the point worth making as well, I know you know this, but just to make sure people know that we know this as well, because that's what they're thinking. It's not just, at the moment, it's rent on substandard
Correct.
accommodation.
Yeah.
That you could probably provide twice as much accommodation for the same rent if it was done the right way.
Yeah, and the other big factor is because there was such, the last 10, 15 years, and the government at the moment are doing a lot of work around rolling back right to buy because of loss of council housing, is they're hemorrhaging money on private rental. So, if you're an investor and you own a bunch of flats, you don't really mind who you rent to if someone's going to pay it. But obviously the level that they're paying is much higher. So the scary thing is, for instance, last year, Westminster Council. Now, Westminster is slightly different because they have a larger homeless population, if you like, the more traditional homeless person. But they spent 28 million quid last year on hotels. Okay. Greenwich spent 8.8 million quid last year on Travelodge, just on Travelodge, You've got people like Kensington and Chelsea spending about 4 million quid. And again, this is not on housing. This is on B&Bs, hotels, Travelodge, whatever else it might be. And so the area that we've really been looking at recently is how do we improve that situation? Yeah. The answer is to build more social housing. We all know that. And there's no rocket science in that. That's just easy. However, it takes on average 4 to 5 years to build social housing. So is there something we can do in the 4 to 5 year period whilst we're sorting ourselves out, basically?
Before we go on, and you give us a solution, which I know, and which is a really good one, I think, let's just talk about why it takes 4 to 5 years to deliver it the normal way. Yep. Because there is just so much misinformation out there. Some that drives me around the bend. So, for example, I saw a report from the local government association the other day, and someone re-quoting bits of it, basically saying planning is not a problem. The fact that planning, it affects housing supply is a myth. I mean, what planet that person must be on? Yeah. I don't know. But so. Why does it take 5 years to deliver social housing?
I mean, planning, and it doesn't matter what anyone says. The truth is, planning is a huge delay to the system, no doubt about it. And I think, most councils are hugely under-resourced, and so even if you get good officers, they're still under-resourced. And when they're under-resourced, they then get other people in who aren't very well trained. The other thing that's happened over the last 7 to 10 years, 5 years, is the amount of information that's now required in order to get planning and the cost of that. And this is why there's a big problem with SME developers, of course, is because the cost is just now just ridiculous compared to what it used to be. And it's one of these where it's almost become this, because you can do it, they then expect you to do it. And, so the amount of reports you now have to produce to demonstrate the impact or lack of impact, it's one of those where historically it used to be, okay, maybe there's going to be some noise from that road on these houses. Okay, well, if there is, we could put a condition in to say if someone complains, the developer has to build an acoustic fence at the end of the road, right, fine, or the end of the garden. Now I need a report, and I need you also to pay me, the council, to get the report checked, and that takes time and everything else adds up. So huge amount of reports. I read a thing the other day saying that there was a report done on the speed of a cricket ball. So this was a housing development next to a cricket pitch, and the committee said, we're worried about the cricket ball hitting someone's window. So they found an expert to write about speed of cricket balls, and the end of the report, which probably cost somebody a couple of grand and added on a few months, was at county level, on a certain pitch of bowl and a certain player hitting it a certain way, you might hit the window. And then so, okay, that's fine, great, okay, we can improve it now. But, so there's this thing of, because we then get asked to do that. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what it's like. It does make sense, and it's crazy, and it's one of the many problems. Just on that, I'll tell you another little story. So that my last guest told me, but they told me after we'd finished the chat, and he said, "Oh, actually, I wish I told you that," because we got onto the subject. I basically during the conversation mentioned something about planning committee members, some of them sometimes being thick. Right. Now,
this comes back to our training idea earlier on, by the way.
Yeah. So anyway, look, obviously, it's just like, there are thick people everywhere in life, including thick property developers. Many people might even say that I'm one of them, right? So, but there are less clever planning committee members. That is a fact. Not all of them, but anyway, I'm just trying to reverse myself out of what I've said previously. Anyway, but the point is, so afterwards, he's telling me this story. We got onto this conversation about planning committee members, and about what I had said, and his view, once he was off air, was a bit more akin with mine.
Okay,
you know? But anyway, so he's telling me this story. And this is classic. So this is for people, anyone in development. If you're a developer or a planner or an architect, you'll know this. But there are lots of people out there that have no idea just how crazy bonkers some of this stuff is. And I want people to understand that, so they know the sort of bullshit often that we have to deal with. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm telling me a story. He's had a scheme. Highways might have been an issue, so of course they go and get a highways consultant, does a load of detailed, traffic studies, all of the stuff you have to do, the detailed report. Yeah, submits it a part of the planning application. Yeah, planning committee member that doesn't like the scheme for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. It might have been a shit scheme. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was. He said it was a great scheme, right? But anyway, doesn't like the scheme. Decides that he's going to do his own planning, his own highways survey.
Okay.
Yeah. So he gets a deck chair, goes and...
Is this a true story?
This is a true story, right? Yeah. Goes and sits outside the site for between 2 and 3 o'clock on the Thursday afternoon or whatever, counting cars, traffic numbers or whatever. Turns up at committee, and this is one of the things said. Like very often, some committee members, they feel like they got to say something because they're on the committee. It's like, it's my turn to say. What should I say? I'm gonna. Right? So he turns up, all super clever. Bear in mind, this guy, what his history is, what his background is, I don't know, but he wasn't a highways consultant, right? Turns up, well, it's all well and good. We've submitted this. The applicant has submitted this highways report. Blah 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 blah. But I'm not sure it's quite right actually. So I've gone to site and I've sat there last Thursday and noted that between 2 and 3 o'clock, or whatever it was, there were 2,000 cars, or I don't know, whatever he said. Anyway, meeting goes off on a whole tangent, as it does. I'm sure we've seen it many times. Refused. Like it's literally off the scale, ridiculous. Some of the stuff that happens. So anyway. You honestly have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
Most people not involved at the coalface of planning and planning committees and having to deal with the stuff that we have to deal with, you just would not believe it. And by the way, I'm not one-sided. I'm not saying that there aren't shit developers out there as well that do things wrong and try to blag it and all the rest of it, because of course there are, right? But anyway.
Yeah, the big problem is, and there's so many war stories, isn't there? Everyone has them. So it's just... well, who knows? Maybe this planning training thing that they're talking about and the planning reform consultation that they're doing will go some way to it, I think.
Yeah, and it's worth adding before you obviously come on and continue to talk about the really important thing, which is getting more housing created for people, particularly getting people off the waiting list and out of temporary accommodation. It's worth people understand as well, because I know there are those that assume that, well, if it's affordable housing or social housing or council housing, then that just goes through and that gets approved really quickly and easily. But even that doesn't, does it?
No, not
so your whole thing about, well, it might take 4 or 5 years to actually deliver permanent affordable housing. Yep. That all gets sucked into the same bullshit about reports and delays.
And here's a good example about the way that the system works in a slightly strange way. Okay, if you get planning permission for 100% affordable housing, you get a certain amount of funding for that affordable housing. Okay, if you get planning for 50% affordable housing and 50% private housing, and then post-planning, you say, I'm going to change that private into affordable, you get more funding. So there is no advantage to getting planning permission for 100% affordable. So all the affordable housing schemes we do, which we know are going to be 100% affordable, we do policy level affordable, the rest for private sale. And then after planning, we then suddenly say, we're going to convert that now to affordable, and we get given loads of money. So it's an odd system that it works in that way. But anyway, so the planning is always done that way. The other thing, it just takes time. The building regs alone is taking more time now. So even once you've got planning, that's taking longer to do.
Just on that, are you doing any multi-story stuff?
We don't have anything in Gateway 2 yet. And again, I think just for people's benefit, on the back of, and there's probably another podcast we'll do about this, on the back of Grenfell, there was a big change to the Building Safety Act that's coming in, and you now have a thing called high-risk buildings, which are over 18 metres, 6 stories. This is to do with residential. And there's a new gateway system for the health and safety. And there are insane war stories about the gateway system. So we've got a couple of projects at that height, but we've not gotten to gateway yet. But we're aware of it. Yeah?
So just for people that might not know what that is, effectively now, for buildings of a certain height, even once you've gone and got planning permission, you had to go through a whole another detailed, very long and slow approval process before you can even build it.
Yeah, and the reasoning behind it is good. The safety behind it is good. It's just, once again, the system has not been set up yet ready to deal with it, which is the problem here. So that's taking time. Build costs have affected time because any viability that was done more than 2 or 3 years ago, and there's lots of them because of stalled sites, suddenly don't add up because of inflation. And so they're all having to be redesigned in order to get them to be viable now. So that's also taken a lot of time. So, the average is 4 to 5 years. It's as simple as that. So in that time, someone like Greenwich would spend about £40 million on Travelodge whilst we're waiting to build permanent social housing. So we've come up with this idea where we've done a lot of work with modular housing providers. And we've done a lot of work with, that sort of kit of parts, volumetric housing type. And so it wasn't just us, but, we were sort of involved with a modular provider looking at some products, and we looked at how we could try and really promote that. So the idea is we get temporary planning permission for 5 years for temporary housing on unused sites. The modular providers then lease those homes to the council on a 5-year lease. And at the end of the 5 years, they get craned away, they get refurbished and get reused somewhere else. Now, what this does is that there are a huge amount of sites sitting around empty, and empty for the next few years at least, if not longer. So some good examples would be big regeneration, which is sort of 5 or 10 year regeneration, 5,000 homes, 2,000 homes. There's always a bit of land in the end phase that's not going to be touched for 5 or 6 years. So we can say, well, okay, we'll stick a load of temporary housing on that piece of land. Thanks very much. And we're talking to a couple of housing associations who have that in London. The other one is stalled sites. So sites that have planning, but for various reasons, either because of the Building Safety Act has made them no longer, they need to be changed, or because of viability. are stalled and the developer and the landowner is saying, well, I don't really know what to do with this land, or land that is earmarked for future development, but it's going to take 5 years to sort out. Yeah, and that's for instance, council-owned land. So we're talking to councils about land they own to say to them, look, we know that's going to be social housing at some point in the future, but whilst we're all sitting around waiting, is there something we can do? Because it's temporary planning permission, the hope is that it will go through much quicker, because quite a few of the conversations that you would have for permanent planning permission, understandably, should have less weight because it's temporary, and also because it's a crisis response. And this is the bit that we keep starting from here. Is I go to loads and loads of talks, and I was at Homes UK at Excel last week, and I go to all these things, and I have all these meetings, and everyone talks about it being a crisis. Oh, it's a crisis. Oh, we need to do something about it. Okay, well, let's do something then. Let's have a crisis response to the crisis, not it's a crisis, let's just carry on doing the same that we've always done. So we are talking to house associations who have land, we're talking to private landowners, we're talking to a lot of councils, and it is not there to replace social housing permanent, it is there to replace some of those high cost, low quality rooms and HMOs and bedsits that families are being put into. So we're working with a couple of modular providers on the systems. The finances work that it is cheaper than the hotels, and the rest of it's not as cheap as permanent social housing. Of course it isn't, but it's miles quicker. So the plan at the moment is depending on the planning department, and it comes back to this planning conversation, we think we can get people living in these within 6 months. So if you had a piece of land and said, right, get on with it, Dave, I think I can have people living in them within 6, maybe 9 months. Yeah. So that's the plan, and we're getting quite a lot of interest in it, and we're very excited about it. And we're just going to see how it goes. And as I say, it's one of these. The pushback we get is, it's a sticking plaster, or it's not going to solve the crisis. No, it's not. What it's going to do is buy us time to sort stuff out, because the problem we get in is at £4 million a day, it is a time critical issue. And yes, I would love for the government to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, but that is 4 or 5 years away. So is there something we can do in the interim rather than just carrying on with the way we have been doing things?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the interim, obviously, people who are living in, all right, good accommodation, rather than families and kids.
Absolutely.
Very often in diabolical shitholes.
Yeah, the average size of a travel lodge is 16.5 square metres. Now, bearing in mind that a statutory or a national guidance for a one bed is 50 square metres, so it's like a third of that. Now I don't think that temporary housing needs to be the same size as permanent social housing. I think it can be smaller, but it still needs to be a bit better than a hotel room with someone or 2 kids in it. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And look, and talk about travel lodges. Obviously, that's not ideal, but travel lodges are a lot better than a lot of the spaces that people are stuck into.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a really interesting thing that we're beginning to pursue. We're very excited about it. We're still coming up against a bit of bureaucracy, and this. The planning is slightly. What's interesting. There is no planning classification for temporary housing, so it either falls under a normal residential classification, or depending on the user type, can be a hostel classification. But there's no planning class for it, so there's no guidance for it. The London plan, so the mayor, the Greater London Authority, have a policy about meanwhile use for residential. But again, they just talk about it being normal residential. So there's a very specific need here that we're hoping that we can begin to really do something with.
Yeah. So it needs to happen, and it's an excellent idea. But of course, I suspect at the moment the problem is, I'm sure, planners and planning is going to be looking at that stuff just like any other application.
Absolutely.
And you're going to get stuck in all the usual delays.
Yes, I think that, we're not built one yet because it's such early days. I think once there are examples of this type of thing being done historically. There's a few in Cornwall, for instance. So there is case study there. I think once we can do one of them, then things will start getting easier because we can say to other councils, look, this has been accepted. Because it's a temporary planning permission, that's the key we feel to unlock this. Because if it was permanent, I would agree with all of the space standards or everything else about it. And we're not suddenly talking about doing really bonkers things like building up against people's windows and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it's things like, biodiversity net gain, which I think is a good thing generally. Do you really need to do that on a temporary site? Probably not, because it's going to revert to how it was. You don't have to pay CIL if it's a temporary housing, so therefore, you don't pay CIL with affordable anyway. But CIL is a consideration. So there's lots of things that the temporary planning frees up in cost terms as well. So energy is a huge cost, particularly in London, or having to do net zero carbon and all the rest of it. You don't have to do that with temporary planning permission. Now, we still need to meet building regulations. Of course we do, because that's a legal requirement. But a lot of the policies are a little bit, we hope, can be considered to have less weight because it's only for 5 years. And it's a crisis response. And that's the key. We built Nightingale hospitals in 3 months in the middle of COVID because it was a crisis response. But for some reason, when it comes to housing, everyone's just saying, well, we'll just carry on doing exactly what we used to do. It's
crazy, isn't it? I just said on the last one of these I did with the guy when we were talking about planning and stuff like that. The problem is, it seems, planners at the moment and local authorities actually, for many, many years, they act like they're the police, where actually it is an emergency. They should be acting like the fire service and the ambulance service. To actually all get together to solve a massive problem, not to think their job is to just stop stuff all the time.
Yeah. And it's, I worry that we're going to become planning bashers and, just constantly go on about how bad committees are and stuff. But the planning departments throughout the country, quite a lot of them are still called development control.
I know, I talk about that all the time.
And so the word control, and it's just sort of like, so it shows what their brand is. Their brand is controlling development, not, something like a growth facilitator, of which there's some rules applied to it. Do you know what I mean? And it is this thing of, are we starting from a position of everything, what we're trying to do is just stop everything, and there's these filters, and unless you meet them and all the rest of it. And so yes, I suspect that it will come up against that, particularly at officer level. I think our hope is that we're the main people we meet at the moment, the housing people within councils, and obviously they see the huge expense that they have and the huge problems that they have, and they say, well, this is a great thing. It's a site that's been empty for 10 years. Nothing's going to be done with it for another 6-7 years. These guys want to put a little 2-story modular building on it for some housing that's cheaper than what we're currently spending. Literally, why would you say no to that?
Well, that's what I would have thought. So as you know, I had Lewis Herbert on here a little while ago, who's a fantastic bloke. I'll put you in touch. So he's doing similar-ish type stuff. So you'll definitely be able to do something with him, which I think will be fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be good.
And you look at, I don't know, let's take the new towns years ago and stuff like that, and I don't know, like Docklands and stuff like that. When local authorities want to make stuff happen, right, it can happen. Yeah. So now, of course, there are so many local authorities under financial pressure for all sorts of reasons, but including temporary accommodation. So obviously targeting the ones that perhaps are most under pressure and therefore most incentivised would be a good way forward, wouldn't it? I would imagine. I don't know if you've already started doing that. I would imagine somewhere there's a list of the temporary accommodation spend of various local authorities, is there?
Yeah, I don't know, but yes, that would be worth looking at for sure. I mean, you can get the data on how much each of them spent. Croydon last year spent 28 million quid on temporary housing. So the data's there on what people spend. It's quite difficult. Well, it's not difficult at all, but the way that the finances work are very odd in that the amount that the council get to house people is really low, and everyone knows it's too low, so they're already spending more money. So the question is, well, how much more money are they going to spend? And if you're, in your private rented market, you're spending quite a lot more money. If you're in normal social housing, you're spending a little bit more money, and then the GLA might give you some money, and someone else might give you some money. So that side of it, like we're architects, we draw pretty pictures really, but that side of it also creates delays, and the system seems to be designed to slow things down.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking that, because I know from, obviously I'm on the getting deals done side, and I know that, of course, local authorities, and I don't want to sound like I'm having to go at planners all the time and the rest of it, because I'm not. They are under resourced. It is a complicated system. It is tricky, and there's loads and loads of good ones. Yeah, and if it was up to me, actually, I would massively increase the pay of all local authority planners. I'd pay them as much and ideally more than the private sector, so that it attracted loads of the best people. But of course, there's all sorts of reasons why that can't happen based on the way local authority wage structures work and the rest of it. But anyway, so I'm definitely not anti-planners or anti. I guess I'm anti-red tape and anti-bullshit, basically. So I just want people to understand just how much of that there is, so that they can oh, fucking hell, this is a big problem. It's not just developers and people whinging about stuff that isn't real, yeah? Now, when it comes to doing new stuff, right, everyone's, particularly, I'm going to say local authorities and people, they've got a lot of people looking at them. They don't want to make a mistake. Their hands are tied in all sorts of ways. They've got loads of red tape to deal with. So, of course, they don't want to do the wrong thing. So, of course, the way to get this stuff to happen is to create a little bit of an exemplar. Exactly. And then they can just say, oh, well, look, they did it, and it's worked, and they've halved their temporary accommodation costs, and actually, well, that wasn't bad at all, was it? Oh, well, maybe we can do that. So I think the key thing is, and I mind helping you try to do this, actually, and maybe people listening will actually have ideas, is like a fight. What you need, isn't it? Local authorities that are massively under financial pressure, really want to help solve the problem, and therefore, they got people in there that are actually gonna kick a bit of arse and make it happen.
Yeah, and if there's people listening, and I know you're going to help us with this, we'll build on any land. If someone owns land in an area that would suit it, and they're thinking, well, it's just sitting there for 5 years because of X, Y, and Z reason, whatever the reason is, there's all sorts of reasons why these things get delayed, then fine. Any private developer or a landowner could lease it to the council. Might not be very much money, but it'll be a little bit, And that's exactly what the housing associations are doing. They're going to lease the land along with the temporary accommodation to the council. So it doesn't matter who that is. Picking up just what you're saying about the councils, the other thing that we've got to remember is it's public money, and the best councillors I meet are the ones who remind themselves we want to do things. We're not against doing things, but we are spending someone else's money here, and so the risk aversion that flows from that is just phenomenal, And so that's the other bit that we're trying to fight against and this is why. Companies with very good financial covenants or very good balance sheet or very good history of doing things always do better because they're seen as a lower risk. I mean, in the last years, the amount of modular providers that have gone under or contractors have gone under, it sort of doesn't really matter what size you are, but that's seen as a lower risk. But yes, we would happily go. We could go to a council. You say to me, if you said to me, I own this piece of land in Croydon, and we can fit 30 flats on it. We could walk into Croydon Council and say to them, okay, Paul wants, X pounds per week rent for the land, and the modular provider wants X pounds per week rent for the properties for 5 years. And so therefore, as long as you can pay us that amount of money, jobs are good, we'll do the deal. It's not a problem. As I say, the land doesn't need to be anything, the land is just the land. It doesn't really matter who owns it, so... Yeah, that's an idea, isn't it? We are talking to a couple of private developers who are looking at this, who own land, who are saying, well, why don't we just get even if it's a very small income, but, we could get an income for a few years on this or 5 years on this whilst we're sorting out our big development or our big, that we know that the plan is going to take ages and we know that, just getting it started is going to take ages. So, yeah, it'd be good, wouldn't it? It'd be interesting. It'd be fun. You look thought you're thinking of a piece of land now, aren't you?
I know about loads of pieces of land. Obviously, I'm thinking of. I've sort of like. I've jumped to all the problems, and I'm trying to work out about because we know they're going to come up, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's
Go on, we'll do it now. Do it live.
Shall we do it live?
Yeah, go on.
All right. Okay.
Give us at least one of them.
Well, look, the numbers are key, aren't they? To start with, as always, right? The financials. Now, I think and suspect there'll be people out there that will probably let people have the land for. There'll be nothing actually.
Yeah, and the other, I suppose the other way to flip it is land costing you money now, right? From either a security point of view or health and safety point of view or whatever it may be, right? If that's costing you money, and it might not be very much money, and you can get rid of that cost and create an income, again, even if that income is just like a passive income, a fairly low income, then that's fine, isn't it? It's still worth exploring as long as you're not giving up, what do you guys call it? Opportunity cost within the next 5 years. That's probably the bit that's going to come unstuck for a lot of people, isn't it? I would have thought.
Yeah, but like you say, there are plenty of vacant sites about, particularly in, there were parts of the country. I know you started off mainly talking about London, but lots of parts of the country whereby you've got vacant brownfield sites sitting there, and they probably could sit there forever, actually, unless someone subsidises them, because you can't afford to develop them. But actually, they are unviable. So there's there's lots of sites that are at various levels of viability or not, and it's probably worth touching upon here the myth of land banking.
Yep.
Right. So that's a whole another massive subject, which I'm going to do a whole another one of these on, but. People that don't really understand how it all works like to believe that, well, the only reason we've got a housing problem is because developers own all of this land and it's got planning permission and they're just sitting on it to keep the price high and stuff like that. Completely wrong. And there's been all sorts of independent government reports and inquiries that have confirmed that that's not how it works. But nevertheless, there are people that wrongly believe that. But so what really happens, as you know, there are lots of sites that are, even consented sites that don't get developed straight away because the market's changed, the numbers have changed. It did stack up when you got planning,
exactly,
or started trying to get planning 4 years ago.
Yep.
But by the time you've actually got planning and build costs have gone up 30% and interest rates have gone up and end values have gone down or stayed the same, all of a sudden it's like, shit, it doesn't work anymore. Or you've got some big problem with utilities.
Yep.
You can't get the power to the site. There's massive issues that people don't understand outside of the sector that mean actually sites are not ripe, ready to go. That's why they sit there waiting for actually something to change and the plan B. So there'll be tons and tons of sites, but I think the key thing is going to be, and this is the numbers we need to look at. So you've obviously got the modular suppliers.
Yep.
Let's just call it the box, right? So the fully fitted out
box.
Obviously, you got infrastructure and what have you. Now there doesn't have to be as much of that for a temporary scheme as there does.
Yeah. And there's other funding. There's things like the Brownfield Land Release Fund, which we're looking at for the infrastructure bit. So that's a government fund that if sites are stalled because there's a particular infrastructure cost, then you can apply for some of that money. Or if the infrastructure costs are low, you can just spread it across the 5 years anyway. Someone still has to pay for it, but again, that's not a particularly difficult thing to fund if you've got a guaranteed income from a lease from a council who's got the best covenant. So yes, so there's a cost for the box, and it doesn't really matter where that is in the country. The specification's the same, the quality's the same, the size is the same. Fine, there's a cost for that. There's the land infrastructure cost, which is site specific, and some sites are going to be really cost effective, and some sites are going to kill the job.
Yeah.
So yes, you got those two. You got whatever the landowner wants for his rent, their rent. Yeah. Anything else? Costs of doing the planning, and then I suppose management. Who manages it? But again, that's one of the things that we're looking at with most people is a third party management company. Because again, the way the funding works, which is really weird, if the council manages the property, the amount of income they get is like half of what they get if a third party manages it. It's very odd. But anyway,
Yeah, you see, that's
I
something
don't know enough about it.
I haven't got a clue about any of
I
that.
don't know enough about it.
But
But that's an operational cost rather than a development cost. So yes, you add all that stuff up, it equals X pounds per household per month, and you go to the council and say, is that cheaper than what you're spending now or not? And if it's cheaper, then let's crack on.
Yeah.
Based on the figures that we talked about earlier on, the average is £2,000 per month per household.
That it's currently costing councils.
Yeah. So you would expect to be able to get lower than that, wouldn't you? For sure. And that's the average, of course. So quite a few of them will be higher than that. So I suspect that we can get. Well, I know we can get lower because we've already run a lot of these figures. What we've not tested a lot yet is the site specifics. We're working on maybe a dozen feasibilities at the moment. So, one of them is a stalled site that's already been demolished. It's already cleared, ready for development. So that the infrastructure costs there are hardly anything. But another one is we have to demolish a building, and there's some asbestos and all the normal stuff that you get when you demolish stuff. So that's the capital infrastructure cost for that one is having to come from somewhere else to top it up, because otherwise it won't work because of the nature of that site. But yeah, we've done a lot of work with the modular providers about the cost of the box. So we kind of know where we are with those. And they've all been designed, the ones we're working with, for the price point that we need to do. As I say, they are smaller than the national standards. Generally, I'm going to just find one here. Our one beds are about 30 square metres, whereas the national standard for a permanent is 50. 2 beds are about 50. 3 beds are about 65. And it's single bedrooms. It might be bunk beds, but it's priced as well to meet the pricing that we know we're going to have to meet. So yes, it's the same as any viability. You run the numbers, don't you?
I'll tell you that I think the thing that might flip the numbers here, because I can see I'm already doing the numbers in my head, and thinking how difficult this is going to be and unviable in a lot of cases. The thing that will
you missed the negative. You're too negative.
No, I'm not. I'm fucking Mr. Realistic.
Go on, then.
And that's. But the thing is reusing the units. So that's where the value will be. So
that's why the cost of them is a lot lower. As I say, the box bit we know it works, financially, because we've already run all the numbers, so we know that the numbers work. The bit that we are, the bit that we're still testing is that infrastructure cost, what that is. Yeah. So if the infrastructure is zero, these things work brilliantly all day long, but it's never going to be zero. I know that. But the other thing is who else is paying for it? So it may well be that if it's a permanent future development site, the landowner might say, well, I'll pay for some of it because I'm going to spend it eventually. So the connection for the power, for instance, that's a one-off cost at that point in time. Rather than doing it in 5 years, you're going to do it now. So there's all those variables. But yes.
No, right. So the key thing is, right, as always, number one, everything starts with land. You've got to find the sites. You've got to know where you're looking, right?
Yep.
So the message here is, hopefully, there might be someone from a local authority listening, or someone that knows someone at a local authority that thinks, actually, Jim's super keen to make stuff happen, and I know he might like the sound of this. Thing to do is put us in touch. Invite us, you, me, whatever, get in contact with you first, I don't know, whatever, to talk about, actually, we are seriously interested in exploring this. Then we can find sites, then we can do the numbers, and then you can sort of take it from there. Yeah. But I think it really needs local authorities that actually want to see this as a solution.
And the thing is, they do. The ones, and this is what I think makes us very optimistic. There's a couple of things I want to say. One is, the modular providers we're working for have got prototypes, so people can come and see them. You can see the quality, see the size, see how they all work, and all the rest of it. We can change the materials outside so they don't look like site accommodation. They look like decent housing. Everyone we're meeting says, this is great. This will really help with our program, because most councils have a program that they're trying to do stuff around. So all of the ones we've met, and it's over a dozen of them now. This is a really good idea. The devil's in the detail, because as soon as we get past the yes, it's a really good idea, into, well, okay, what's actually on the land? Is there even electricity? Is there any drainage? What's the foundations going to be? What's the cost going to be? What the planner's going to say? Is it a conservation? All those normal things. Yeah. That's the stage we're at now. So, yeah, I think it's one of these, though, that obviously we're only seeing as many as we can when we can. But if people know people either in the councils or private landowners, or people who have got some land where they're thinking, well, I'm not doing anything with it for 5 years at least, and I know there's a need in my area, then fine, great, we'll have a look at it. As I say, we can run a feasibility really quickly. You run the numbers and they either add up or they don't, and it really is as simple as that. And if they don't, you move on to the next one, because it's not like, with normal property development where you can say, well, okay, during the life of the planning and the development, I could tweak this, or that might change, or this might change, or this is a time related thing. So if the numbers don't add up, fine, we just move on literally as quickly as that, because there's no point in flogging it if the site's not going to lend itself to this very specific product for a very specific need that is a very specific price sensitive model. So it's something that we can do very quickly, and as I say, if it doesn't work, fine, let's find the next site and carry on.
Okay. Right, just a quick one. Whether you are a massively experienced and well-established property developer already, or maybe you're a new or aspiring one, either way, you will know that it is really not easy to find viable opportunities to come up with the best scheme, the best design that's going to maximise the land value and fully de-risk things for you, and then to go on to get the very best planning permissions as quickly as possible. However experienced you are, you will know that that is not an easy thing. I have put together a super detailed scorecard based on my 40 years experience in this industry, reverse engineering everything that I've learned, including lots and lots of mistakes over the years, and everything I've done to maintain, touch wood, 100% planning track record. I'm pretty sure there will be stuff that you don't know. Go and do that scorecard. Find out just how good or not your current process is, and I absolutely guarantee you will learn at least a little something, if not a ton. So it's bit.ly/MLA score, all in capitals. You can do the Millbank Land Academy scorecard. I absolutely guarantee you will find some interesting stuff, and it will help you get much better deals. Modern methods of construction.
Yep.
Which is something I'm really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you are as well. So what do you want to say?
A couple of things would be quite nice to cover. One is, what's the advantage for developers, SME developers particularly? What's the disadvantage? What's the risks? Because there's there's risks associated with it. So I think let's talk a little bit about that.
Right, let's just jump back a bit. So in terms of what even is modern, what are modern methods of construction? So in my book, it's really anything that's not traditional construction. Traditional construction is what we've been doing for years and years and years: bricks, blocks, concrete and timber, all of which, or some of which, can and are still incorporated within modern methods of construction. But modern methods of construction is, or can be, a whole load of other stuff as well.
Yeah. And the way we look at it is that 95% of what we build is basically sticking components together. We don't, very rarely do you ever make anything bespoke. So with the exception probably of plastering, what you're doing is buying a thing and putting it with another thing to create a building. And the way that traditional construction works, of course, is we buy lots of very small things, and on a site, we put all those small things together to create the building. And I think the way we look at it is that modern method construction is about saying, well, can I put all those small things together somewhere else and bring the whole thing to site together? And so it's building nowadays is already very component based. 95% of more than that, of our 99% of our job is specifying stuff. We don't design a kitchen, we specify a kitchen that someone buys flat pack and then puts together on site. It's just about, can some of that be done in a factory or off site or some other way and then brought to site, and bigger components are then assembled together, basically, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, although it is that, but obviously we can have modern methods of construction elements incorporated into traditional stuff on site. What's something that you might use quite a lot on site now that you probably didn't really exist 50 years ago? MetSec.
Yep. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So is that MMC? Well, I mean, when everyone's doing it nearly all the time anyway, it's becoming common.
The example I really like is roof trusses. So only 25 years ago, 30 years ago, all roofs were built with just bits of timber. So you'd have your purlin and you would build your roof. And then someone said, you know what, why don't I do all the rafter bit on the ground? And then for a few years, everyone was making them and then hoisting them up. And then someone else said, oh, actually, look, I could make that in the factory and just go and deliver a load of roof trusses. So roof trusses are a classic of this.
It's a good example.
You know, of where someone's just said, we're going to take all those timber components, we're going to stick them together in the factory, and then we're going to go and drop them in on site. And what then happened is, because they could make them in a controlled environment, they could make all the timber smaller because they didn't need as much of a safety factor because of on-site mucking about. So that got cheaper and it got lighter and it got, much more cost effective. And so therefore that was a really good example of how making things in a factory environment created efficiency and therefore reduced costs. So we really like the timber, rafters or trusses as an example of that from a component point of view.
Yeah, because as a general rule, when it comes to building stuff, we are usually wanting things to be quicker, cheaper, better quality.
Yep.
And if we can get all of those by doing things in a different way, then that's very good, isn't it? Okay, so I know you do quite a lot of this now. Do you want to talk through the MMC definitions?
Yeah. Go on,
some people are very much involved in this. They know exactly what we're talking about. For other people, it's a bit new. For lots of developers, particularly perhaps really small ones, particularly if they are builder contractor developers that are just used to doing things that's a bit more of the old-fashioned way, let's call it.
Yep.
A lot of people, they just stick with what they know.
Yeah, but even then, a lot of developers we find are using timber frame manufacturers, for instance. So that's a type of MMC. They're skinning it on site, so it's a normal bricklayer and all the rest of it, but they're getting it built out of timber frame.
Yeah.
And the component bits, so floor cassettes or roof cassettes or whatever else it might be. But look, if I go through some categories, and the categories came about from a funding point of view. So the government wanted to put a bunch of money into MMC. And so they commissioned a bunch of reports like they normally do. Are you going to interrupt me?
I'm going to stop you. Let's perhaps worth jumping back just before that to perhaps talk about why this has become really important and labour and skills shortages.
Yeah.
So short version is, apprenticeships went out the window for years and years and years. Massive, massive mistake that was, right? So not enough people getting trained in the construction industry, and obviously lots of foreign labour that was great and was here for a while and then it disappeared and whatever. So lots of issues with skills and labour.
Look, everyone's talking about the housing crisis now and labour's going to do this and that and the other. This thing's been going on for about 50 odd years, mate. Every government has got some fabulous new target for building houses. So the idea of there not being enough skills to do it and needing additional, and I think this is important to say, it's an additional way of doing it, not a better or worse or replacement way of doing it. It's just an additional way of doing it. So the government said, well, look, we're going to really promote this. So we're going to put a bunch of money in. So there was quite a few schemes that if they were Homes England funded, they had to meet certain criteria. And so the government commissioned a report and it was done by a guy called Mark Farmer. It became the Farmer Report, owned a company called Cast, who are very industry leading. And he came up with these categories. Category 1 is what they call 3D primary structural systems, which is a Ponzi way of saying it's three-dimensional thing. So it's
modular boxes.
Yeah, so it's a box, of something. So and that's your sort of top thing. So volumetric boxes, and there's all sorts of terminology, and some of them are interchangeable. But anyway, a box, right? So that's your category 1. And so that when people think of craning in houses, that's normally what they think of, is that category 1 MMC. Category 2 is two-dimensional pre-manufacture, so panels generally. So SIPs panels or any sort of panelized system. What happens is that as you go down the list, you get more flexibility. So category 1, least flexible through the duration of the project. Category 6, the most flexible. Yeah. Category 3 was components, things like floor cassettes. Most stuff that we buy on sites are now category 3s. Yeah. And then 4 was things just to do with more to do with process and the way of working. So 4, 5, and 6 are really to do with the way that we work. And to be honest, most of it's being done already. So no one really talks much about those categories. So, so 1, 2, and 3 are the main ones that we all talk about. In fact, 1 and 2 mainly are the ones we talk about. Yeah.
So boxes, panels, and bits and pieces.
Basically, yeah. Very good. You should send Mark an invoice for that.
I read his report a long time ago.
Yeah.
And remembered most of it.
The point of the system, the point of the development life that you need to start making decisions are different depending on which category you go for. Yeah. So if we just talk a little bit, actually, let me redo that, Ryan, because we'll talk about this a bit later about how the procurement system isn't set up for MMC because of the way cash flow works in funding to do with stage payments.
Yeah.
No, but I just want to cover off this first bit.
That's fine. You don't talk to the camera.
No, I'm not talking to the camera. Talk to the camera.
Or that man over there, because then we have to cut this.
No,
we won't even leave this in here.
Let's just leave it
for you to get the lesson. Don't talk to the camera.
So, where was I? What was I saying?
Exactly. Just carry on wherever you was.
So, if you want to go category 1, so a box, you need to decide really early in the process that that's the box you want to use.
Yeah.
We're just going to go as a little aside on category 1 volumetric. There's different ways of doing it. And the way we like to describe it is, one is a pre-designed product, a box. So this was companies like Ilka or Top Hat, where they had designed a house and they said, come and buy type 2 or type 3 of the house. And you decided they're the houses you want and you put them on the site, right? And that comes as a box. The other way of looking at it would be what we call a factory build. So you still design it, but then it gets built in the factory to your specification. Yeah. So that's you got a bit more flexibility there.
Yeah. So you've got the Ilka or whoever it might be. So they've got their standard modules, let's call it.
It's an actual house, a standard house. The layout is fixed, the bathroom position is fixed, and all you say is, I want red brick on the outside, and I want this sort of roof, and I want this avocado bathroom, or whatever it may be. Yeah. So that's the sort of, if you like, the most extreme end of the volumetric world is an actual house.
Exactly. Yeah? And interestingly, it's by no accident that's the stuff that's gone down the pan.
Correct. And we'll talk a bit about why it's difficult in risk terms. Then sort of just below that is if you like, a factory built house. So you design the house, but it gets built in boxes in the factory. And it might be that depending on who you use, they say, well, we have a standard staircase or a standard bathroom or whatever, but then you can move walls around. And so that's, if you like, a factory built house, but it still comes to site as a box. So for both those two, you need to decide very early on in the process that that's what you're going to do, because it can't be changed on site. It can't be changed. Once it's in the factory, it can't be changed. So it has a very low flexibility. So you get a huge amount of efficiency and therefore cost saving. And there's massive amounts of other advantages to do with reduced waste, lower carbon. There's all these other benefits of doing it. But the sacrifice is flexibility, is you can't halfway through the construction say, actually, I fancy that door being over there, not here, right? Which on a traditional build you can, because you're only ever putting small components together. So that's sort of most efficient, least flexible. The next one down is in panels, which again are all made in a factory and they all slot together. And again, that gives you quite a lot of design flexibility. We still need to decide quite early on that's the system you're going to use, because again, it's not easily changeable. And then you get down to the component base. And I think one of the big risks and one of the worries for people is that if I'm building a house and my plumber doesn't turn up, because he's gone bankrupt, I can open Google and easily find another plumber. No problem at all. But if I buy a factory built house that's very specifically that factory that's building it and that system, and they go bankrupt, I'm suddenly really in the shit, And I think that's one of the risks that we have to be aware of when we use this sort of factory build stuff. Have you got, how's your experience been with that risk assessment, if you like, from a development point of view?
At the right time, maybe at the end, I'll come on and tell you
some horror stories.
No, not horror stories, because I, luckily enough, touched wood, managed to avoid any horror stories by realising what could go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the balance that you have to take with yourself. You say to yourself, do I want the efficiency, the speed, much, much quicker, miles quicker, the less wastage? I know the quality is going to be good because it's built in a factory environment, so it's not pissing it down with rain in the middle of winter and no one can be asked to do the job properly. They're in a nice factory environment. Yeah. And am I willing to accept the risk and also the lack of flexibility? So we do a lot of volumetric, but panelized, I think, is a really good middle option for SME developers because there's more of them around. So you can get more tenders, so therefore you can, there's a bit more competition in the marketplace. None of it's really new technology, it's pretty understandable technology, and it has an inbuilt flexibility to it, but it's still super quick compared to traditional. So we do a lot of panelized. We like panelized a lot. The other thing is things like site access. So if you're doing boxes, you obviously need to get a crane and all the rest of it, whereas with panelized, you don't. So panelized, I think, is a really, really good way of doing things. As I say, the big advantage of the boxes is it's even quicker and the quality is very good. But it is high risk for them, and loads of them have gone bankrupt. A crazy amount of them have gone bankrupt, which is very sad. That's really something to bear in mind, particularly if you're an SME developer, I think. This is the bit where you say, why do you think they've gone bankrupt, Dave?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right. Why have they gone bankrupt?
I'll tell you why, Paul. Thanks for asking. Because our industry...
And then I'll tell you as well.
Okay. Our industry...
Just in case you get it wrong.
...has been developed over 200 years, whatever it may be, right? Everything in our industry is set up to build stuff in the traditional way. Yeah. So the way funding works, the way pricing works, tender works, contracts are placed and everything is set up in a way that reflects how we used to build. So basically it would be, I'm going to build this house. And the funding people say, well, that's fine. I'll give you enough money just to do the foundations. And once you've done the foundations, I'll come and check them and I'll give you some more money. And then that money will pay for the next bit of wall and I'll come and check it. And that's fine when you're building on site. The problem is when you're building in a factory and there's nothing on site. So the valuation process has to work differently. The industry then said, well, okay, we can get around that by basically saying, well, we'll come to the factory and we'll look at it in the factory and we'll sign it off. And that's what happens. So along the line, they come along and they say, yeah, we can see you've built that module. You can have a bit more money. So that theoretically is working okay. The problem is that if I set myself up as a builder, my cash flow outgoings at the beginning are hardly anything. I don't have any, my place of work is a building site. So it's a project specific place, right? And I only spend a little bit of money before I get some more money given to me by the valuation people. And even then, I'm not really spending it because all of the components I'm buying through other companies, subcontractors. So all the plasterboard's a plasterboard contractor and the kitchen's a kitchen person. And again, until I get paid, they don't get paid. So all this risk is getting spread everywhere. And as I say, if one of them goes under, you fill the gap, no problem. If I'm going to set up a factory though, I have to pay all of those costs for all of those people and all that equipment before I get anything in return. And so my overheads and my investment costs at the beginning is phenomenal. And so all of these guys were carrying a huge amount of debt to get themselves set up in the first place. Yeah. And so what happened is as soon as there was delays in the system, and we've talked endlessly about planning delays and various delays, they suddenly were hemorrhaging money because they're still employing. It's not like saying to Jim the plasterer, I've got no work for you this week. Can you pop along to a different site, your factory guys are turning up day in, day out, so the costs are going out. The lack of certainty that is needed in the manufacturing process compared to what we normally have in the building process is a real disconnect. And that's, I think, where a huge amount of these problems have come from. What's your experience been?
So it's worth mentioning, you think where modular does work really well, right? Student accommodation, hotel pods, build to rent.
Affordable housing.
So basically, things where you have got pretty much a guaranteed exit. That's not speculative, really. And importantly, certainly in terms of student accommodation, hotels, etc., build to rent, you want to get them up and income generating ASAP. So it's a slightly different model. And of course, you've got lots and lots of repetition. Student accommodation being the classic. You've got a load of units exactly the same around the core or whatever. Yeah, absolutely perfect for that stuff. When it now comes to housing, it's a different model.
The private sale housing.
Well, yeah, private sale housing, and even within private sale housing, there's a whole massive range of people building a single house on a little plot, or people, perhaps small developers, a bit more like me, maybe trying to build 8 or 20 on a little site, where the name of the game is absolutely being super detailed, super bespoke, squeezing every single square foot out of that site in order to maximise the land value and actually get the deal to work, where almost by definition, trying to fit square boxes on something like that is the last thing that's going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly smaller sites are very difficult. Big fields, which are flat and have got 500 of exactly the same, roughly the same thing.Maybe there's 4 or 5 house types.
Yeah.
That's not reliant on sales rates. All day long, no problem at all. And I think this was the other big red herring when the government started talking about the need to do modular. No one's talked about sales rates. So all these modular guys were saying, "Hey, we could deliver 50 of these a week," and everyone said, "Well, I don't want 50 a week because I can't sell them. I can only sell 2 a week. Doesn't matter how good my marketing is. Even in top market, you might do 3 a week." So there's no point in you delivering all of these. I would rather build slower. And I think there's the other thing with the flexibility of traditional build, you can speed up and slow down.
Exactly.
So from a sales rate point of view, I think anything that relies on sales rates, volumetric itself, the box category 1, isn't the right thing to do. Category 2 is, though, because that is just bigger components. And
I agree.
But yes, you're right. From a rental income point of view, then category 1 does work because, as you say, it's all about speed to get the rental income coming. So yes, it's not one of these where it's like, oh, let's all just go and buy a house off the shelf. It'll be brilliant. It doesn't work that way. It's sort of saying, well, what am I trying to do with it? What's my site situation? What's my exit strategy? What's the purpose of this? What's the mortgageability of it, or what's the warranties on it? Again, it's this classic thing of, doesn't matter how many times the council and mortgage lenders say, "Oh yeah, don't worry, we'll mortgage modular." As soon as you're a Joe Bloggs trying to do a mortgage application and you say it's come off the factory, they're hold up a second, all sorts of problems, isn't there?
Yeah.
And you get the mortgage eventually. It's just a real pain in the arse to get there compared to, I've just gone and bought a Bellway house around the corner. Other house builders are available.
Actually, it's not new. Yeah. It's really, really old. But I guess, both modular and all sorts of modern methods of construction. I mean, after Second World War, prefab's massive, right? Yeah. So it's not new, actually. But what is new is the fact that it's trying to be pushed really in a big way.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it's still happened slowly.
Yeah.
So, like you say, council mortgage lenders, classic, things like that, warranty providers trying to get their head around it. Everyone wants to cover their arse. Oh, well, that's not how we normally do it. They don't say that. No. They say, oh, yeah, no problem, until you try to do it, and then it is a problem. Funders as well.
Yeah, and coming back to this thing about why they kept going under, is it was the bigger ones. It was the ones who were investing huge amounts of money and millions of VC money in the big factories.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in the last year or two is much smaller, low-tech kind of factories springing up. So rather than spending 10 million quid on robots, it's, let's start small. Let's make sure we can keep the line going, because they all talk about no gaps in the line. Let's keep the line going by without this massive overhead of all this money we've got from venture capitalists. And I think that's will, organically grow a little bit better. Yeah. I think going on to category 2 though, panelised, brilliant. All day long, brilliant. It's quicker than traditional. It's much more efficient, much less wastage, and yet it's got all the flexibility that you want. You design your house, you get it panelised up in CAD, and 6 weeks later, all these timber panels turn up. You plug them all together, and I think it's great. And I think for smaller developers, it's a really, really good way of doing it.
I agree. So I absolutely think that's sort of the way forward. But I'll tell you what's interesting to point. I'm just going to Google here now. I was telling someone about this the other day, that I asked them when they were born, and it was 1989.
Right.
That was a young person, and they had no idea what I was talking about.
That's not that young anymore, mate.
Is it not?
No.
Oh, right.
I have people in my office who were, like 2004.
I'm trying to, I'll tell you what I'm trying to get the date of. There you are, 1983. World in Action. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. And it was, didn't they leak or fall down or something?
Wow. So basically what happened, and I remember this, in 1983, I couldn't remember the dates, that's why I just had to Google it. There was a World in Action program about Barrett's, who I used to work for, and that's where we first started doing stuff, actually.
Yeah.
Basically, timber frame had a whole load of issues, a whole load of problems. Interesting, a bit like, it's nothing like Grenfell, but the whole point about, there was a big scandal, let's call it, and as a result of that, timber frame fell out of favour for years.
Yeah.
So again, it's not new. There was a time when not everyone, a lot of stuff was going timber frame, and then there was the big hoo-ha, and then it disappeared for years, and now it's back, and it's good.
Yeah,
done the right way.
Yeah, for sure. It's like anything but done the right way, isn't it? I think. I do remember, and they'd all got rotten or something, hadn't they? There was all sorts of problems with water ingress. Got rotten and all that stuff.
And interestingly, actually, whatever you're doing, timber frame, traditional, all the various modern methods of construction, if the quality control and workmanship is bad, anything can go wrong.
Absolutely.
Obviously, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, and this is one of the advantages of factory build, for sort of like an umbrella term.
Yeah.
Is that the quality control can be much better because it is a much more controlled environment. You're not having different gangs of tradespeople coming and doing different bits, and everyone's working together. It's in a dry environment and all the rest of it. So there is a quality control, and also a reduced wastage is the big thing with
yeah.
You really managed to reduce that. So it's a bit like all of these things in construction, isn't it? That people come up with these things and say, oh, this is going to solve the crisis. Of course it's not, but it is going to help in parallel with other things, But certainly I would advise that everyone looks at category 2 stuff. I think it really works well.
Certainly for private sale, speculative housing, and lots of other things as well. I actually like panelised stuff the best. Interesting though, it's worth mentioning. At the end of the day, right, developers, we've got to get deals to stack up. So build cost is a massive. I mean, actually now, certainly more than I can ever remember. It's really build costs have gone up crazy the last few years. It's one of the things that made development less and less viable. If it's cheaper to build something traditionally, then the incentive is going to be there to build it traditionally because we're more likely to be able to get the deal to stack up by the land. Now, interestingly, and I think this is important thing to emphasize, is that with a lot of this MMC stuff, when you look at it sort of on a like for like basis, you're just comparing, I don't know, a ground floor panel of that eastern wall of the house, right? And you look at the price of that, and then you look at the price if you built it in bricks and blocks, and obviously you've got your inner skin and insulation and all the rest of it, right? But with a lot of stuff on a like for like basis, depending on what it is, sometimes the MMC stuff can look more expensive. Yeah. But of course, it's nearly all quicker and, like so, very often better quality and all the rest of it, as we know. So one of the things that I know not a lot of developers or all developers are really good at is properly factoring in the related savings in terms of obviously finance costs, getting stuff built quicker, getting sales in quicker, and that is very often the thing that flips the viability when you're doing stuff like that,
It's that experience of saying, I've run my viability and on paper, it costs me this much, right? But 99 times out of 100, there's going to be a bit of delay here or a bit of delay there, and that's going to cost me a bit extra.
Yeah.
So my real viability is actually down here, not this paper one.
Yeah.
And when I now compare my real one to the certainties I get from using some factory built stuff, it then suddenly starts making sense. But I think it's very difficult if you're on the margins of your viability to say, well, why am I pricing in a what if? Do you know what I mean?
I do know.
But me and you both know hundreds of people who have got caught out on this. This is the problem, is that, as soon as you start building something goes wrong, and that's fine. That's just the nature of the game. But it's about making sure you're covering yourself on doing that. And
it is.
What the factory build does do is it reduces a lot of the technical risks and the, people not turning up or whatever else it may be. Having said the thing about, a bunch of them go bankrupt, if they, at least you can go to the factory and you can see it being built. There it is, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if I've told you, I've got a podcast called Inside Property Development.
Right, okay.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Okay. Do you listen to it or watch it?
Only if I'm on it.
Only if you're on it. I thought that might be the case.
No, it isn't the case, because I've listened to your one about viability.
That's what
See
I
what
was
I did there?
Very good. I did. So no, but seriously, so one of the things with that is to help people like do those quick calculations and think, well, actually, blimey, that system is, I don't know, boutique modern, right? I know you like them. I like them. I've been to their factory, really good, right? Oh, look, well, they've got something that would actually work really well on this site. I know exactly what it costs. And maybe then, of course, they can design that in at the start.
Yeah.
Because, of course, one of the other problems is, and this happens a lot, people don't think about that at the start, how they're going to build it. They'll go away, get an architect, get them to do a scheme. If it's the right architect and the right developer, they will come up with a good scheme that maximises the land value. But that won't necessarily be designed to suit any specific system.
Exactly, yeah.
Unless it's thought about and can be factored in and thought about and all the options considered at that very beginning stage.
Yeah. But this comes back to that flexibility and efficiency. And if you want the flexibility to keep changing your mind, it's going to cost you more money. There's no point in pretending it isn't. But if you start making decisions earlier, even though you're locking stuff in, it means you can really interrogate that thing and get that as cost efficient as you possibly can early doors.
Yeah. Which
in this current climate for SME developers makes a difference between it being viable or not.
Absolutely.
It's with margins being the way they are. It's not the old days where we had a load of fat in there and the market was growing so much that you could fuck up a couple of times throughout a project. It's not like that anymore. You have to get these things really locked in early doors so that you're getting it as fixed as you possibly can,
Yeah, you do. And of course, there are lots of other advantages now in terms of, carbon being measured on planning lots of applications and stuff.
You can quite easily analyze that as a time planning risk. So you can say your planning's hard enough as it is. Am I going to make my life more difficult by putting in a cheap gas boiler, which I know I'm going to get pushed back on, which is going to delay me further, and I'm going to dick around for another 2 months, which is costing me more money. Why don't, even though on paper it looks cheaper, it's not, because by the time you've mucked about, you're still going to end up building the more expensive version anyway. So again, I think it's all those hidden costs and delays and all the rest of it, which really catch people out, that, it is what makes the paper utopian ideal viability 9 times out of 10 not being the final one, is it? Because all this other stuff comes up,
So how much of your stuff now are, because I know you do loads for HAs now, don't you?
Yeah.
Is incorporating this type of stuff?
What, modular?
All the different modular, Cat 2, whatever it might be.
The vast majority is probably Category 2 panelised. Different councils and RPs do different things. Everyone starts with a position of saying that they would like to investigate it. But, house associations are exactly the same as a private developer. It still has to be viable. The figures still have to add up. It's not, they don't have all this secret money to do all this extra stuff. They don't. So they're having the same conversations about if I build trad, it's going to be cheaper. So is it worth it? But yes, because of X, Y, and Z other reasons, The slight difference, I think, is because they retain the product, they don't sell it. They have a bit more skin in the game to do with longer term maintenance and all the rest of it. The other thing is they're very risk averse. So this idea of, that the modular companies, particularly the category 1 modular companies, really do struggle to stay afloat because of the external pressures that are delaying things for them, is a major issue for most clients that we work with.
Yeah.
Because they just don't want to take risk, We were doing some work with Greenwich, and on one site, I think we're on our 5th modular provider.
Oh, really? Wow.
Just keep going bankrupt.
Blimey.
We had the first one. I think they went bankrupt even before we started on site. We then got some foundations in, but they went bankrupt. And, it just went on. And we on that one, I think we might now just be building trad, or category 2 stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit sadder story, really, But again, it's one of those where they really wanted to do volumetric. They really wanted to see how it worked and all the rest of it. So, I think so. Most of them are still being fairly like wanting to do it, sort of philosophically, but then being quite pragmatic about doing it in the right way and the right time.
So talk to me about procurement on typically on this stuff, because I know what you and me, we had a chat the other day about planning, because obviously I know you from years ago when you worked for another excellent practice that were really good on planning, and obviously they did all the production stuff as well, a cell, yeah. Mm-hmm. But now you were telling me the other day you're nowhere near as big on planning as you used to be.
No, we've become, just generally as a practice, we're a lot more technical than we used to be. We find the planning, particularly in London, we wanted really to give a bit of stability to the business. So although construction itself is not the most stable, if we wanted stable industry, we wouldn't be working in this, would we? But at least it's sort of, it's, you've got the project, you do the tender, it's a longer piece of work each time. So
yeah. So typically now, so what happens? An HA or someone will come to you and say, well, we've just got consent for this, I don't know, 50 houses, or I don't know what it might be. Can you tender for the working drawings? Basically,
it tends to be through the contractor.
Oh, actually, yeah. So that was it.
So right, what normally happens is most HAs and councils have frameworks with architects on them. They'll do the planning, and then in post planning they'll go to market, and it'll be contractors. And then the contractors are appointed for what's called pre-construction service agreement, PCSA, which is basically like the working drawings bit. And then that's where we get appointed through the contractor.
Oh, so interesting. And that'd be design and build, will it?
Yeah. 99.9% of what we do is design and build. We've talked before about architects who don't know what they're doing, and cravat wearing and all the rest of it. And one of the downsides of the frameworks, particularly with councils, is they're led by, in councils in particular, led by politicians who like the big name, like the, shiny architecture, and unfortunately are not getting advised very well at the additional costs that brings and all the rest of it. And we've got a project at the moment, and it's a classic where they've got planning and we're saying, okay, to build this, it's not unbuildable, but it is unbuildable in any reasonable way. Okay. And it's one of these classics where the planning architect is saying, but I've seen it done in design, and I've got design's a real bugbear of mine about this. Yes, it is technically doable, but not for this product. And this particular example is to do with fire. And without boring you to death with all the technicalities of it, it eventually means that you need a fire curtain in someone's house, right? The maintenance of a fire curtain within a social housing is just bonkers. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And no house association would ever sign up to that. But to technically do what they want in design terms, that's what you need to do. So yes, I totally agree. There is an example of a private house in design where someone's got this because they're happy to have a fire curtain. This client isn't.
Well, not only that, and they can afford it.
Exactly. And I think, and so there's, that's one of the tensions that we find is that, but we also do design work for particularly RPs, which are not framework. Some of the smaller projects aren't framework, or some of the very specialist stuff that we do is not framework. So we can do some of that as well. The other good thing about the category 2 stuff is it gives you much more variety in what you can do. Even though it's a system of building, it's a much more flexible one than volumetric. And I think one of the things that we all struggled to get our head around with volumetric was just the sameness of it. Because obviously, you don't want loads and loads of different types. And this is where people like your house builders, your countryside, your Bellways, your Barrett, your Red Rose and all that are actually really good. A lot of their house types in plan terms and construction terms are pretty similar. But what they're really good at is saying, we're going to put a bay window on this bit and we're going to do a different roof on this bit and we're going to do this, that and the other. And I think some of the criticism of volumetric and category 1 was that they were all a bit samey.
I've got to say, actually, just on that, one of the things I really don't like about them is you can tell, can't you? It's like
boxes. Yeah,
it's hard to get them to look good.
It's a veneer over a box.
Yeah.
What you don't get is a lot of overhangs, for instance, just because of the way the thermal bridging works in technical terms. It's quite difficult, and so it's easier just not to do that. And panelized is the same. Panelized is quite rigid, and so again, you're trading that flexibility and efficiency. And if you have a particularly odd shaped site, the way to maximize value is to do a non-standard house type to fit on a particular site. But yes, there is the downside of efficiency means doing the same thing again and again and again. But the downside of that is it always looks like the same thing again and again and again, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, which is why, again, it lends itself to student housing or hotels or all the rest of it, where, it is all about that efficiency. And then you just apply this sort of veneer of facade on it, So, I think that's something that that was kind of overlooked in the early days of, isn't it all brilliant? We all should be building out a factory sort of thing, And there's enough criticism already in development and house building and architecture about sameness, I think, particularly in bigger projects, isn't there? So, it's definitely something that I think everyone needs to bear in mind about trying to reflect the local area and stuff.
I think the full modular is...
There's a place for it, but it's not the holy grail that I think we all thought 5-6 years ago when the government were chucking loads of money at it, that's for sure.
Yeah. Do you remember my little plan I had for my little Croydon site?
Yep.
Did I tell you about it?
Yeah, this is the viability thing though, wasn't it?
No.
This is another company.
No, this is another thing. I'll tell you in case you've forgotten. So, really little site in Croydon you got planning for me a few years ago. I've actually gone back and tied up a couple of other little bits of land to get a slightly bigger scheme. Yeah, yep. It's only a little one. It's only 5 houses, but I want to design. It's just because I just like doing interesting stuff now, right? Where I can do something a bit different and learn some stuff as well. An off-site manufactured Cat 2 kit house.
Yep.
Yeah. That will be super efficient. On that site, it's a specific 3-bed house type that I know will just work really well on lots of other sites. I mean, obviously, every site's different, and you need a little bit. So what I actually want to invent, and I know there's lots of other people doing this as well. Couple of 2 beds, couple of 3 beds, couple of 4 beds. Whether we sell the design or whatever, you've got the working drawings, you've got all of the components, you've got all of the panels, which then can be gone and bought from lots of different manufacturers all over the place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a super sustainable offsite manufactured kit house that other people can then buy and use and factor in that design.
Who makes the panels?
Whoever makes them.
Oh, okay, fine. So you're not
panel makers, not me,
but you're not reinventing the panel system.
I'm not going to be making panels.
So you're just collecting a bunch of components together, putting it into a pattern book,
a specific house type. Yeah, exactly. A pattern book, effectively.
Yeah, the Georgians did this,
I know.
So old original Georgian houses were a pattern book where you would then pick out, I want that type of fireplace, that type of brick, and the developer would go and build it. So we'll do that. Yeah. And we're going to use the Croydon one as a test bed.
Yeah, because I'll tell you for why. And as you know, I've got another business that trains other developers and stuff like that. One of the things I talk about a lot is, maximising land values, optimising schemes and all the rest of it. one of the key things and all of that, which I know for a fact lots of other developers don't do and they get wrong, is they don't do their market research right. So they come up with the wrong mix, the wrong size of homes, right? You know, I don't do that. I'm super detailed. I analyse the shit out of everything. And I know if all of the sites I've ever developed over the years, or even been involved in getting planning for and developing for other people, if the house that works the most often and is the optimum house type for most sites, if I could only build one house type for the rest of my career, it would be a 3-bed, 6-person of just over 1,000 square feet with a very specific configuration. Yeah. Surprise, or maybe not, because it is the house type that works the best. That is exactly the house type based on the market research that works the best for my little Croydon site. So I thought, actually, do you know what I mean? I might as well design this pattern for that, and then one, it'll be interesting, and two, I can use it elsewhere. Can sell the design, other people can use it elsewhere.
And it's quite an America thing, isn't it? In America, they do this. You buy kit houses quite a lot.
They do,
but we've got much bigger land, much more land. No,
exactly.
They're big ranch houses. I know that they're different size, but they do. You are this. It's much more common, I think, to then say I've bought some land and I'm going to buy a house as a private owner, occupier. But you're saying it from a pattern book of other developers could then say, well, and I suppose the big advantage is, as long as you index link it on inflation, you always know how much it's going to cost.
And it's almost like, and again, coming back to people that don't know, you know, a lot of people slag off the big developers, right? Some of them are shit, but some of them are actually, you know, we had the Barrett house type book.
Yep.
There's about 150 different house types in it. Our patch was London. So most of the time, I wasn't looking at any of those standard house types because they weren't going to work on a site in Chiswick. You know, we did have the house type book, and it was quite interesting to see how it all worked. And with that house type book, you know, every little screw down to the last, you know, now the number, everything, you know, they knew exactly what was in. So you knew exactly what your costs were.
Yeah, and also efficiency, because they were buying the same bedroom door times 10,000.
They were buying the same stuff all the time. The people on site were building the same thing all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
So, you know, I know people slag off identikit, you know, housing developments, and so do I, right? Because I like good design, and so do you. It doesn't have to be that way, actually. There is a way of making that big stuff good, and some people do it, and more developers are coming to do it now. So, you know, not all volume housing is tight, but there is a reason that they do it that way to make it much more
cost effective. Yeah.
You know, most of the time, smaller developers can't do the stuff that, and therefore benefit from those designs and those efficiencies because they're not doing enough of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But with come up with a little bit of a clever pattern book that I know, or we know, or can work out is going to work on 80% of sites because it's designed the right width, the right length, the right square footage, etc.
Do any house builders would they sell you their kit? Like, could I ring up, you know, Western Homes and say, I've got a little bit of land, can I have a Chelmsford or whatever it is? Can you give me 2 of them, please? They don't, do they?
I wouldn't have thought so.
None of them would do it.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, you go to the opposite end of the scale, you look at self-builders.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There are kit houses. You know, you can go to Potton or someone like that that will sell you a Chelmsford or whatever it might be.
Yeah, there are. But I suppose, it's that bit in the middle, isn't it? Because a lot of the self-build stuff are quite big.
They're all big.
Money, aren't they? Yeah. So yes, I suppose that kit house, which is for targeting developers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do it.
Anyway, so that's it. All right, we'll wrap it up there.
I get to say it, right, because I'm co-host now.
Oh yeah, go on in.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. How was that? Was that okay?
That's very good. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Property Development. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do join us every week where we'll be speaking to house builders, developers, experts, planners, and everyone involved in trying to get more much needed housing created the right way.
We'll learn together how we can collaborate rather than fight, and by working together, we can all help create better places, spaces and homes and a much more beautiful world.